Okay, so before I do my normal introduction, Matt, can you hear me now? Oh, he's putting on his headphones. Matt, can you hear me now? Thumbs up. He's got nothing. Matt,
Are you muted?
I am not muted. Can everyone else hear me?
Yes.
Yes, everyone else can hear me except for Matt. Matt.
Seems okay since
Yeah, so
closed
if
audio
they're
from
gonna-
back.
Okay, so he just shut. Oh, that's funny because I can see you and hear you. Is that better?
Yeah, I'm gonna see if I get it to work without the headset.
Okay. Just give me one more minute. I want to see if anybody else is waiting. I don't see anybody else waiting.
I seem to be working.
Okay, great. Okay, where's my preamble? Okay. With a quorum present, I would like to call this regular meeting of the Co-op Budget Committee to order at 6:32 p.m. This is a regular meeting for the month of December for the Co-op Budget Committee, and the agenda was posted more than 24 hours in advance as required. For tonight's meeting, we've added the option of an electronic Zoom format in accordance with New Hampshire emergency and executive orders related to the pandemic, which allows an electronic meeting format and does not require a quorum of the board to be physically present at a specific meeting location. For purposes of this meeting tonight, I'm myself, Darlene Mann, and I have Cindy Van Conant here with me at the Hollisbrook Line Middle School Library. And I'll take a moment to just introduce those who are participating via Zoom. We have Matt McGuire, Lauren Ridstrom, Tom Enright, Raul Blanchet. I'd also like to thank and welcome our BA Kelly Seeley and our district moderator Drew Mason, who I invited as part of the agenda for tonight's evening. For tonight's meeting, we also have some other members of the public participating who I believe are probably participating because they're involved with the checklist and meeting formats. So we have Jim Belanger and Mary Thomas also listening in. I am expecting Dave Blinn and Brian Rader to join us, so we'll see them, I assume, momentarily. So if we just give me a minute here. Moving through the agenda, I'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, at this time, I'll ask if there are any agenda adjustments. Seeing none, I just want to logistics of the meeting. We have live participants, like I said, Cindy and myself. We have everyone else on Zoom, and so for purposes of recording the meeting, Rich Raymond is, we're projecting the Zoom meeting on a screen, and he has a camera on Cindy and I in the library and on the boxes of the Zoom meeting as well. Okay, I'm just going to admit Dave Blinn and another member of the public. Just give me 1 second. Okay, so we have Dave who joined us at 6:35 p.m. So proceeding through the agenda, I'll ask if there are any agenda adjustments for this evening. Hold on a minute, I have a few things to coordinate here. Okay, seeing none. Where's my agenda? There we go. Oh, I have appointment of a meeting observer tonight, which is Dave, so he joined us just in time. Fantastic. I have approval of minutes from the November meeting. So at this point, I will take a motion to approve the minutes of the 11/19 meeting. Moved by Lauren. Second. I have Cindy as the second. Thank you. Any questions, comments, changes, additions, deletions? Okay, seeing none, since we are in a Zoom meeting format, all of our votes need to be taken by roll call. So I will begin that roll. So all those in favor will be doing the roll call to vote on the minutes. Cindy?
Aye.
Cindy is aye. Tom? Tom Enright is aye. Lauren? Lauren is aye. Matt?
Aye.
Matt is aye. Raul has his thumbs up, so he's an aye. He's a yes. And Darlene Mann, aye. And Dave Blinn? Abstain. Okay. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 601 with Dave abstaining. Okay. Moving on, I've added one category to our agenda this evening, which is correspondence. I've shared with everyone an email that I was forwarded. Just give me a minute to pull it up on my screen. Here it is. So, Brian Rader, there was correspondence sent to Brian, Dave, and Matt as the Brookline members of the Co-op Budget Committee by Eric Power, which was asked us, it's short, so I'll just read it aloud. When working on the Brookline BudCom Study Committee, I learned a great deal about budget committees. One fact that came to light is that in the warrant, budget committees can only provide recommendations on monetary appropriation warrant articles. Please see the following from the New Hampshire Municipal Association. There's a link to the frequently asked questions, and the question is, whose recommendations should appear on warrant articles and budget items? The response is, recommendations should appear, if at all, only on appropriations articles. The law does not authorize the inclusion of recommendations on non-money articles. The commentary by this on the correspondence goes on to say, if a warrant article does not contain an appropriation, then a budget committee is not authorized to provide a recommendation on the warrant. I bring up this fact since in past years, the Hollis Brookline Cooperative Budget Committee has included their recommendation on non-monetary, non-appropriation warrant articles such as adoption of SB2, adoption of tax cap, inclusion of tax impact notation on the warrant, RSA 32:5V-B. At the next Co-op Budget Committee meeting, I request that you bring the subject up and recommend the Co-op Budget Committee seek guidance as appropriate. So I'm marking that as correspondence for this evening, and would like to go on to say that upon receipt of that correspondence, I did submit it to Superintendent Corey and requested a legal opinion on that information, which I shared, the result of which I shared with everybody, which essentially says, it's from Jim O'Shaughnessy from Drummond Woodson, which essentially says case law supports budget committees making recommendations on monetary and non-monetary articles and anything included on a warrant article. His final line, his response is a little bit lengthy to read. I'll make sure it gets included with the minutes. As I said, everybody has seen it, but his final line of the legal opinion states as follows. Accordingly, the law does permit the governing body and budget committee to include their recommendations on the warrant for non-appropriation petitioned warrant articles. So that is the information that I received upon request for a legal opinion. As I said, it will be included with our minutes. It's shared with everybody here. And I'd like to just take a few minutes to see if anyone has any questions or items they'd like to discuss about that. Okay, Drew? Not as a budget committee member, but since you are our moderator, I'm happy to recognize you.
The same question came up last summer, almost in verbatim, and the same response was forthcoming from council, almost verbatim. So this is old news as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, and Jim did note that he had, prior in the correspondence, did note he had given information on this, so we've asked him, in fact, to do this again. I was unaware of the previous correspondence, but I'm glad we have it in writing, and we can, like I said, include it in the minutes, and we have kind of a reference point going forward. Okay. Seeing no other commentary, I'll move to the public input section of our meeting. I do see we have a couple of people, as I said, a couple of members of the public that work on our implementing our town elections. We have one other member of the public. So at this point, after reading the following, I'll open public input and we'll see if we even have any. As public input is a courtesy agenda item and not mandatory at monthly meetings, I would like to stipulate the guidelines for public input, which are consistent with the ones used at public hearings. So our ground rules are as follows. Commentary is limited to residents of the towns of Hollis and Brookline of legal voting age. Please state your name and address for the record. Limit comments to either the posted agenda or related to financial and budgetary items under the purview of the Co-op Budget Committee. We are limiting public input to 2 minutes, whether they're prepared in writing or spontaneous in nature, and respectful commentary is required and should be directed to the chair without reference to or direct engagement of individual committee members. So at this point, I will unmute some of our members of the public. Mary, I could ask you can unmute at this time. It's stating asking me to ask you to unmute, and similarly, Jim Belanger, you're unmuted. So if you would like to raise your hand or be recognized for public input, please let me know. Okay, Jim?
Yeah, the only reason I'm here is because I'm the school district moderator, and I'm going to listen to what Drew Mason has to say about the meeting, and that's it.
Okay, great. We're happy to have you. Anything from Mary or Chris? Okay, seeing none, I'll ask Chris to, actually, I think I have to mute her. Okay, so we'll move on through the agenda. The next meeting on our agenda is an annual meeting discussion, so that's why I've asked Drew to attend. At the last school board meeting, there was a discussion about possible changes to our meeting format, and I asked Drew to attend tonight to kind of explain to us where we are in terms of public hearings, annual meetings, and what I've shared with you is the presentation Drew is going to give tonight and some additional information he shared with me from, I think it was the School Board Association, with regard to some House bills that passed that enable some flexibility or different ways of doing the meeting. So I've asked Drew to kind of fill us in a little bit. I think what he'll explain is that the process of the meeting is under the purview of the governing board, but since we're so closely, the school board, but since we're so closely aligned and involved, I wanted us to kind of hear firsthand what some of the issues and options are. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Drew. And I will put up his presentation. Just give me a minute. I have a bunch of things open. There it is. Okay. So there we are. Okay, go ahead, Drew.
Thank you. Go on to, I can't see it, so.
Oh, I'm on, so what I have up is the, so do we have, do I have to share my screen?
Yes, she is.
Okay, sorry. Give me 1 minute. I have to go back to the
Sorry.
screen sharing mode. There it is. Oh, I have so many things open. Okay, wait. Oh, there it is. Okay. Share that screen. Okay, there we go. Can everybody see that?
Great.
Okay, perfect.
Thank
All right, now we're good to go.
This is obviously a topic of interest to the governing bodies and budget committees involved. We've got 3 moderators covering 5 districts and towns, and we all need to at least be aware of what we're doing. This is my synthesis, and I've drawn from several sources. Next slide, please. The School Board Association put together a fairly big packet early in the month that has slides from one of their presentation. Also included is a text document from the Municipal Association giving guidance, and a memo from Drummond Woodsum also giving guidance, and they're pretty much along the lines, and also the text of House Bill 1129. I have exchanged email with the staff attorney for the School Board Association. I have been in communication with Peter Webb and Jim Belanger, but what I'm saying here is not meant to represent their opinion on anything. But we are talking, and we know we need to coordinate. I have not yet had a chance to talk to district or town council, but I plan to. Next slide, please. I have pruned the material a little bit because Hollis Town Co-op and Hollis School District are all traditional meeting districts, not SB2, and they all follow the Municipal Budget Act. So I'm going to go over what is the House Bill 1129 process, and then I'm going to apply it with my own recommendations to local elections and the business session. As you may know, the annual meeting is broken into two parts. The first part is the voting session, if you will, and the second part is the business session. Last summer, the legislature passed and the governor signed this bill, among many others, that provides some alternative ways to deal with both sessions of the annual meeting. The process involves 6 major steps with a lot of little pieces. Notice, a first virtual session, a time for public comment, a second virtual session, preparing the warrant, and then drive-up voting. So next slide. Notice has to be sent to all registered voters. I don't have the exact count in front of me, but between Hollis and Brookline, it's somewhere about 11,300 voters. It has to be sent to the voters, not to households. So if you got 10 people in a household, they get 10 pieces of mail. It has to be mailed at least 7 days before the first session. It has to completely describe the procedures for both meetings, how to participate, how to vote, public comment, and so on. And it should specify how and whether public comment will be allowed during the virtual sessions. Next slide. The first virtual session can be chaired by either the chair of the governing body or the moderator. That is determined by the governing body, and the governing body determines whether public comment is allowed. It is not required. The meeting is open to the public, not just registered voters, and just for voter education, you need to go over and over and over at each of these opportunities what the steps are, how people participate, what's going on, what the timeline is, and so on. But the main purpose of the virtual session is to present and discuss each of the warrant articles with or without public input. There follows a public comment period where public questions and comments are solicited and received from the public, not just registered voters. There is a line in one of those documents that says, but the governing body may choose to give more weight to registered voters than to general members of the public. The ways that they can participate and comment, the items in quotes are what the House bill says. The School Board Association is suggesting that the "or" in that phrase doesn't mean you have to do them all. but their recommendation was electronic mail and voicemail. And maybe if you had a voice-to-text application, that might help. The board can reserve the right to summarize the comments. The School Board Association says the governing body should prepare a public record of all of the submitted text and make it available. The second virtual meeting is again chaired by either the governing body chair or the moderator. And again, the governing body determines whether public comment is allowed, and again outline all of the steps going on with the different processes. And again, it's open to the public, not just registered voters. Here, the School Board Association recommends reading publicly all of the comments, including the name of the commenter. Then they present and discuss each warrant article, consider and address the comments received, and then the governing body may amend the articles, including petition articles. They have the same power of amendment that the legislative body has. So they can't delete an article and they can't change the subject, but they can certainly change amounts that are appropriated and all other aspects of an article. And they are subject to the 10% rule. And then they should vote at the end of each article whether to amend it or move it to the alternative warrant as is. The next step is to prepare the warrant. I need to make a terminology clarification. There's an official ballot and an alternative ballot. And people who are involved with ballot preparation understand the official ballot contains items that are specifically allowed by statute. That includes the elections, it includes zoning amendments, and in the case of an SB2 district, it includes the entire SB2 district warrant. The first ballot on the warrant, the first article on the warrant, let me try that again. The first article on the ballot should ask whether voters approve the procedures. And just because, in case there is conflict with the requirements relative to bond issues, as I'm thinking about the Hollis School District, they're recommending labeling that 1A as opposed to Article 1. The warrant is made available for printing by voters. It has to include the date, time, place of voting. Voters can bring the warrant to the voting session. The alternative ballot is everything else. So what we did last summer with the drive-through vote, that was an alternative ballot. So you can't put things on the official ballot unless specifically authorized in the RSA. What the governing body is doing for the business session is putting together an alternative warrant and an alternative ballot. The various advice and recommendations makes a distinction between a warrant and a ballot. A warrant is a document that says what we're going to vote on or talk about. The ballot is where you actually vote. The ballot, according to the recommendations, is only handed out at the voting session. So you don't get to print it at home and bring it. And it can be printed up capable to run through the AccuVote machine. Drive-up voting is what they call it in the RSA. The date, time, and place is determined by the governing body. It is voted by secret ballot using drive-up procedures, but they never define drive-up procedures. It is my contention, agreed with by the School Board Association, that conventional voting procedures can be used. So in other words, you can call it a drive-up vote, but you drive up to your voting place, you get out, you run through the ballot clerks, get your ballot, mark them, and put them in the machine. You can vote on the alternative warrant on the same day as the local elections. They have to be physically different pieces of paper, and they have to be clearly marked. One is the official ballot, and one is the alternative ballot. And for the co-op, voting can be done in each town rather than in one place. The first thing that, as I mentioned before, on the ballot is asking the voters to approve of the procedures. If the procedures are approved, but the budget is defeated, the governing body has a choice. They can convene another meeting before September 1st, or they can simply adopt previous year's operating budget, not including separate warrant articles. If the alternative ballot procedures are not approved, then all other articles are disapproved, regardless of the vote, except the stuff that's on the official ballot. So the election of officers, zoning board, and so on. But everything involved with the business session is back to square one. The School Board Association put in a note in the footnotes saying that it wasn't clear to them where that would put an SB2 ballot. So it's just unknown by them at this point. That is once over lightly. Now looking at the local elections, I don't think we should need to bother with this process for the local elections. We just, a little over a month ago, we finished a much larger scale vote, and we're able to do it safely and in person. So my own recommendation is don't bother, just go ahead and vote. And that would include, as I said, the elections for co-op, the two local school districts, the two towns, any zoning amendments, and the SB2 ballot. And that would be on March 9th, unless weather postponed. The business session, however, next slide, it's up to the governing body to decide which process they will use. You can vote on the same day as the local elections. There are no absentee ballots involved, but the timeline is very tight, as Darlene mentioned before. Next slide. These are a summary of the timing issues involved. Notice of the public hearing at least 7 days ahead. The public hearing cannot be less than 25 days before the first virtual session. Notice for the first virtual session happens 7 days before. The second virtual session cannot be more than 7 days after the first. Then you need time to prepare the warrants and the articles. The actual voting is on a date, time, and place determined by the governing body and has no specific minimum or maximum. So the governing body can choose to let it go for days or weeks as convenient. Next slide. Last summer, we did a hand count. We had 11 articles and roughly 1,380 voters. The polls were open for 5 hours, and the hand count with 10 people took 5 hours. I counted up the articles on last year's warrants before the shutdown for the co-op, Hollis School District, and Hollis, and there are 42 of them. So, and the local election polls are open for 12 hours in Hollis and 12 and a half hours in Brookline. My opinion is preparing these for the AccuVote machine is just critical. You're going to kill me, and you're going to kill everybody who's going to try and help if we have to count 1,200 or 1,500 ballots after having been there on election day for 12 hours. Next slide. I know that the Secretary of State and the Attorney General are working on more guidance, and it is promised real soon now, but I don't know when. My contacts in the legislature say that they are also trying to fast track something, but whether they can actually agree and get it passed and signed before March is anybody's guess. And the last slide, to reiterate, don't use this alternative process for the local elections. Use it for the business sessions, because getting everybody together in one or a small number of rooms and going on for hours and hours is just more risky. I feel strongly that however we do this, we should prepare the ballots for the AccuVote machine rather than trying to hand count. And while it would be convenient if we can fit everything in time for March 9th, I think it's more important that we get it right than that we try and jam everything together. That's once over lightly, and if you folks have any questions, I'd be delighted to try and address them.
Okay, so I guess my most immediate concern is just the time frame. Like we said, you have, because you still have to have a public hearing in advance of the first virtual session. So we're in effect talking about 3 meetings before voting, right? Because you need a public hearing, a first virtual session, a second virtual session, and then whatever day the voting is going to take place. So
and remember, we have 5 districts to fit all of that in.
Right. Right. Okay.
That's great.
Yeah.
So as a result of sharing this information with the governing board, I guess I'm wondering what, so the governing board is going to, the school board is going to decide the virtual meeting aspects, and then we would just back up any public hearing notifications and dates from whatever those decision points are.
Well, they can decide when to have the election. The vote on business session. If you want it on March 9th, I can tell you that your public hearings are going to probably need to move earlier.
Okay.
Which I think is a challenge for labor contractors.
Yes, that was included in the minutes, from the draft minutes from the school board's meeting last week. Okay. And so you have, we've shared this information among the co-op, the school board or budget committee. You've gone to the selectmen, Hollis School Board and Hollis Budget Committee is not aware of the potential process changes yet?
I don't know. I know that Andy and Jim Belanger are talking about it. I don't know whether the budget committee or the school board are acutely aware of it.
Okay. And so for the co-op, is there, as a result of the meeting with the school board, is there, my understanding from the minutes was there's potentially a meeting in early January, like an extra meeting?
We have a special meeting in January.
A special meeting to address
this topic, because we haven't discussed it as a board.
Okay. So Cindy, and I'm not sure if you all heard Cindy, but she said there'll be a special meeting at the beginning of January to discuss and address this topic for the co-op school board. So, anyone else have any questions for Drew? thank you for laying it out for us, Drew. It's as clear as it could be, I guess, for where we are right now. So I appreciate the details and the information, and I guess we just all need to have a calendar in front of us and start backing up dates and timeframes to making it all fit.
Yeah, I mean, I think March 9th is a bridge too far. Especially if you want to run them through the AccuVote machine.
Mm-hmm. Because how long does printing of those ballots take, like the preparation of them?
Well, that's hard to say. I've heard numbers anywhere from a week and a half to 3 weeks, because you have to remember there are something like 80 towns that all use the AccuVote machine all at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just printing the ballots, it's also programming the machines. All of that is done by one organization, but they have a lot to deal with.
But the other thing is
Have we ever used that machine before?
Have we used that machine?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you use. That's what Hollis uses. I assume Brookline uses it as well.
I'm talking about the school board. We always count the ballots, right? Or we.
Well, the elections are done on the machines, and the meetings are done, except for last summer, it's in person, and the vote is done there. But yes, it's hand counted.
And we aren't limited by RSA to that we have to have the vote in March. I think I seem to recall an RSA that said, if you you have it in March, or you have your voting in March, in April, or in May. I mean, obviously that kind of went out the window because we ended up with end of June voting earlier this year. But there's no, this House bill kind of supersedes those other timelines and allows for the flexibility to hold it when you need to hold it.
Yes.
As long as you meet all the other parameters for the virtual sessions and everything.
the other thing is what is the deadline for candidates isn't until January 30th.
Oh, so Cindy's question is, how does it shift the deadline for candidates, petition articles, and notification of those timeframes?
In terms of for the election, if they use the standard process, those things are the same.
That stays the same.
In terms of the business session, it would key off of the first virtual session.
Okay. So deadlines for petition articles and things like that would back up from there.
Yes.
Okay. Well, it seems like you will be busy with the start of the new year.
Something like that, yes. Neither the select board or the co-op school board has voted on anything, but I got the sense that they were both of them were leaning towards it for the business session.
Okay.
Drew, how much do we pay you?
Nothing. Not enough.
Well, double it.
This has been an awful year for moderators.
You should double Darlene's salary.
I asked Jim, if he wanted his job back, and he said no.
He must have been foreshadowing and seeing something coming, because he's shifted his focus a little bit just in time.
Yeah, he's a smart guy.
Okay, great. Well, Drew, thank you very much. Are there any other questions at this time? If anyone thinks of anything later, just send me an email, and I'll make sure that I get any of our supplemental questions to Drew, and we'll hang on for this next ride, it sounds like. So have your calendars ready and flexible, because I'm not sure what any date is anymore. So,
Right.
Great, thank you. Just give me a minute to look at our agenda. I think the next item was an FY22 budget review. So what Kelly shared with me and what I subsequently shared with all of you is a round 4 view of the budget. I'll skip, where's the best word? Where's the best place to go? So the current view, just give me 1 second to organize my views here. Okay, so the current view has the operating budget at $24,160,377, which is $195,794 below the guidance operating budget. So that view is a 2.5% increase from the current year, and when combined with other warrant articles, excluding the contracts for the professional staff and the support staff, the percentage increase is at 2.2%. Again, still waiting on impacts of the collective bargaining agreements. But maybe, Kelly, if you could just, I'll switch to the new items page and share that screen in a minute. And, oh my gosh, okay. And maybe walk us through what changed with this budget view?
Yes, I can do that. We had a change there in personnel in both schools. We dropped the subs for food service and the instructional directed subs, if you will, guaranteed subs for each school. That is in line with the other districts as well. So right now, all 3 districts have the facilities sub in their budgets. So we dropped those. And in academics, I believe we dropped in the middle school, the textbooks for social studies. The state has not come up with their curriculum adjustments, so we're going to hold off on those until we get more information on that. I think those are the biggies that we dropped in new items, and then the other drop comes from the retirement benefit that we have for all all teachers, I should say. No one has officially called for their retirement, so we dropped that placeholder, which was about $48,000, I believe. I think those are the big ones.
So any of our staff was required to submit their retirement request by December 1st for next year's retirement.
Right. Mm-hmm. They can retire, but they won't get the benefit the following July.
Right. Okay. Wow. All right. Okay. So, as I said, that brings, excluding the cost of the contracts for professional and support staff, that would net to a 2.2% increase at this point in time in the total budget. So 2.5% increase on the operating budget, the actual warrant article for the operating budget. And then because we made some adjustments in the additional articles, like reducing the facilities maintenance trust, reducing the special ed expendable trust, the SAU budget assessment is up from last year, but with all of those changes, again, excluding impacts for CBAs, results in, at this point in time, a 2.2% change. So does anyone have any questions about the budget itself? We have the trend view, which summarizes the larger file itself with the superintendent's view, which is just like the line by line, account by account breakdown. I'm not sure if anyone had any specific questions. So, Kelly, would you consider this a final budget view at this point?
Yeah, I would actually. I don't think we're waiting for anything else. So I would, other than you know, like you said, the CBAs, this, I think, would be our final offer.
Okay. Does anyone have?
Darlene, at the last meeting, there was a conversation about a warrant article for capital improvements, but I didn't see it on the draft warrant. So that's been changed.
So let's see, the draft warrant. So Article 8 is for the school building and facilities maintenance trust, but there is not an article that puts like a bond forward for significant, like a more substantial level of improvements.
Right, okay.
But Article 8 is the facilities piece.
So that's a change from the last meeting.
No, I think what we discussed at the last meeting was that in prior views, it had been up in the 200,000 range, and now it's dropping down to 115. Because of the shift in, let me go over here. So,
In round 3 and 4, they took out some of the paving.
okay,
The facilities
so,
and maintenance, the green line on the spreadsheet,
where, Cindy?
on the, round 4,
Yeah,
under facilities and maintenance.
right,
Green sheet, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm on your green, but yeah.
oh, okay.
So those went from, they took those.
Okay, so I got, oh, no, you know, I think we were at the $115,000 mark last time, because I'm looking at this page that breaks down rounds 3 to 4 for facilities maintenance. You can see that from round 2, a roof section was removed, paving was removed, but the other HVAC, AC blinds, screens, window seals, storage shed, NPR tables, security systems, those all seem, oh, there was the building systems evaluation, so that was going to be like a full inventory of our capital and our facilities projects that were needed, Kelly?
Well, it was more looking at the building systems we have and if we need to improve them, if there are energy savings that we can gain from making changes.
Okay, so kind of similar to the evaluation that was done in Hollis.
Yes.
Before they made the decision several years ago to put in the air source heat pumps and solar and all of that thing.
Exactly.
Kind of okay,
exactly.
so
this would be focused just on the middle school for this.
That 26,000 that's removed.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's being essentially pushed off.
Yes.
Okay, and it was not in there for the high school at any point. So
No.
we took out about 100 and a little over 140,000 in capital or facilities maintenance items, and then started the list for the potential bond items and put some placeholders in, looking out in a future budget year, not FY22, looking out more like FY23. Those items at this point are limited to completing 5 roof sections, security upgrades, complete some more paving, that energy system evaluation, window replacement, and an HBMS. So the 5 roof sections are originally for the high school, and then there's also some roof replacement in the middle school. So right now, that list stands at 1.1 million. Okay. So looking then at the CIP that's included, that gives us kind of that 4 to 5 year view of things. I guess I need a little bit more clarity on what items from, say, FY '23, '24, and '25 move potentially to a bond, or, what we consider to be the prioritized list of things, from those outer years that need to be maybe moved forward or just included because we are considering that as an option.
Right, there are some things that, like the five sections go beyond our CIP, so they wouldn't all be on there. The others should be, for the most part, on there.
Okay.
But they may be in sections.
Because if I look at it 23, 24, and 25, that's like, it comes to 2.9 million.
Right, and we didn't put everything in there because there's, like, for instance, the energy efficiencies study.
Right.
The 30,000, but.
Oh, right. Well, and then another million in the outer years, so.
Yes,
Okay,
and the
yeah,
same
thanks
with
for pointing
the
that
egress.
out.
We aren't gonna know what those costs are, so I don't wanna put those in a bond until we do the studies, so.
Right, the traffic study and an energy efficiency study.
Right.
Okay. I'm sorry, Lauren, did that address your question?
I don't think so. But,
Okay.
in last year's budget, we had certain one-time items. I think one of them was the paving of the parking lot. Correct?
There was, on the road,
Same question I was going to back at the last meeting, Darlene. We had $150,000 or $200,000 of one-time expenses, which we've taken out of the budget, I believe.
Right. And then we've replaced them with 115,000 more.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, so I just need to figure out what that delta is, which we don't need to do now.
Okay, let me see if I can, so we had 200,000 in last year's trust, and then there were, I think, just like additional items included in the budget itself, in addition to this 200,000. So we had some pieces that were covered within the trust, and we had some pieces covered by the budget. But for the trust itself, we were looking at proposed fund. We started at 85,000. We were adding 200,000. We took out 7 or 8 different items and had an available balance of 82,950. So I would anticipate that 82,950 plus 43,000 is still sitting there because we did not do the middle school elevator repair, right? So at this point we have around 126,000, give or take. Kelly, maybe you can get us whatever that number would be, but it's looking like around 126,000 as the outstanding, the current balance in the trust, and we would be looking to add 115 and take out 85, Kelly? No, take out 115, sorry. So we're putting in 115 and taking out 115.
correct.
So it's an in and out. And so we would still have that 125, 126,000 sitting there.
85,000 is available, because I'm not including the 40,000 that,
So, okay, so
or,
the 85,000, is available, but
Yes.
but we really have 126,000 because we're kind of, the 43,000 isn't eligible for other use because it's for the elevator.
exactly.
Okay. So I think one of the reasons for the reduction to the 115 was because we did spend some time talking about a potential bond for FY23. So that shifted the priority.
Well, that, and you guys also requested that we remove the warrant for the special ed, and we reduce the maintenance trust to help reduce the overall increase to the.
Right.
So we did that in response to your request.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we asked you to look at kind of both sides, the budget side as well as the additional article side. Mm-hmm. Lauren, is that helpful at all?
No, but let's move on.
Okay. Anyone
Can I
have?
make a comment on that bond?
I'm sorry, can you say that again, Tom?
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment on that bond.
Sure.
I may have misunderstood, but I don't understand coming up with a bond for 1.1 million next year, and then the following year having another $1 million of expenses that weren't added into that bond. That would piss me off as a voter.
Well, we may or may not do those things. We have to do the studies first. I can't possibly put those costs into a bond until we understand what those costs are.
I understand your rationale, but don't expect my vote. Once I give you a bond, don't come back to me for another $1 million the following year. Bonds are supposed to be forward-looking, and
Sure.
I would consider that poor planning. Just my comment.
Right, and that would argue that we should probably get those costs nailed down and then do the bond. I know the school board wants us to do bonds as opposed to put things in the budget because of the apportionment. So that's kind of why we're here.
Oh, I understand all of that.
So to back up, I guess, let me rephrase my question then, maybe. What have we taken out of the budget in anticipation of the bond next year? What is that dollar amount?
You could probably go to round one, and that may help explain some of it.
Sorry, let me go right here. So, we started round one of the budget with 508,000 of facilities maintenance items between the two schools, about 280,500 at the high school, 227,500 at the middle school, and that.
What was that? And so what was that in relation to last year's actual? I'm trying to determine the delta between, and ultimately the net result is what's the budget increase. But if we have one-time items in last year's budget that we took out of the budget because we're going to do the bond, that's a budget increase. So I'm trying to determine the delta there. I think last meeting you said it was $150,000. Which, if that number is correct, and I may be out to lunch here, but if that number is correct, our budget increase is more than 2.5%. It's actually 4.5% or 5%, if I'm right. Now, I may be totally out to lunch. You understand my question?
No.
Okay, so in last year's actual, we had certain capital improvements, certain facilities expenses. In this year's budget, we've reduced that number in anticipation of this bond next year. What did we reduce those one-time expenditures? From last year.
From last, the one-time expenses from last year, what we spent last year has nothing to do with the,
Well, for the year we're in, I mean, what's the delta between our budget and the current year? Our budget for next year and the current year in those facilities items in anticipation of the bond. Now, the last meeting, I thought Darlene said it was $150,000.
Okay, let me pull up. So, sorry, I'm pulling up last year's budget trend file. Can I make this go vertical over here somewhere? Okay, there we go. 82,950. I'm sorry, this is just taking a minute. I'm trying to.
Oh, this is Brian. I wonder if the question is really relating to, in the spreadsheet under the superintendent's view 4.0, line numbers 569, 570, which are the building maintenance upgrades, which in the previous budget, in fiscal year 21 budget, that was like $249,000, and those are both zeroed out in the current budget. I'm wondering if he's visibly looking at that.
Sounds like we're getting there, but where are you, Brian?
You can see it on the shared screen.
Oh.
right, and we take those from the new items and put that in those lines every year. Those are the one-time costs related to new items.
Oh, I see. All right, thanks.
Okay, so the 111 and the 137 or 138 for FY21 would equate to the...
That was on that FY21 new items sheet.
Right, so that would equate to the...
going up. Right, go down just a bit.
These two, this 117. So this would be, okay, wait. So that would be for the Haight Middle School, it would be 56,500.
Yep.
And for the high school, 60,500. So we would see 249,325.
32,000.
249,325. So that's a reduction of 132,000. So So last year, we had 250,000 in these two lines. This year, we would have 117,000. So it's a saving, it's a reduction of 132,000.
Correct.
Okay. I think that is,
Go ahead.
I think that answers your question.
Right. So, didn't we in effect move that $132,000 somewhere else in the budget?
Yes. Probably to NHRS.
Well, wherever it went, my point is it's more than a 2.5% budget increase. Because I still have these expenses that I'm going to bond next year.
Yeah, but I think we have, the 2.5% is the net of all of the items. So we have lines where we've gone up, and we have lines where we've gone down, and it's, you know, those reductions that help offset things, like the increase.
And Darlene, I may be wrong here, but I think we've taken $130,000 and moved it off to next year's budget. When we do the bond, we've taken it off balance sheet, and so we moved it off 2 years, and which is okay if that's what people want to do. But to say that the budget's only up 2.5% is inaccurate, because we pulled off $130,000 and kicked them down the road 2 years.
Yes, to get to a mechanism that financially it doesn't have an impact. Yes, so we are basically saying we're not going to do these things because we're looking at another financing mechanism that doesn't result in a significant tax impact or you know, some of these items deserve to be financed over a longer period of time rather than have that one time.
And I think that's great, and I think it's a good way to look at it, but the net result is it should have reduced our budget $132,000, and it didn't.
It probably would have if we didn't have NHRS increases.
But we do, and I'm not going to beat it to death anymore. My only point is we've taken $132,000 out of the budget and kicked it down the road. And so it's more than a 2.5% increase, but I'll let it go at that. We can beat it to death for a long time.
Okay. Anything else at this point? Okay. Okay. So at this point, so we are looking at so there are no other questions with regard to the budget. Going once, going twice. Okay. Anyone who has any questions, please do feel free to send them to me, and I'll follow up with Kelly subsequent to the meeting. So at this point, we have scheduled one more meeting in January to review the CBA, kind of staying on our same time frame and timeline. We have a public hearing scheduled for the first week in February, at least at this point. So at this point in time, and I believe we did the same thing last year, if I would take a motion to accept an operating budget, or to recommend an operating budget of $24,160,377 for the FY22 budget year.
So moved.
Moved by Brian, seconded by Cindy. So, any discussion at this point? can't see everybody in my view. Let me see if I can go back to that view. Okay. Seeing none, I'll take a roll call vote for your vote in favor of, I'll review it again, $24,160,377 is the operating budget warrant article for FY22. Cindy?
Aye.
Matt?
Aye.
Tom?
Yes?
Brian?
Yes.
Lauren?
No.
I need my bigger screen. Dave?
Yes.
Raul?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
And Darlene votes yes. So that's 7-1-0. So that $24,160,377 is what will be in the warrant article for, oh, sorry, just give me a minute. Am I still sharing this? My little box is in the way. For, at this point, it stands at Article 3. So reviewing the warrant quickly, Article 1 will be the professional staff agreement. I'm sorry, the support staff agreement. Article 2 is the professional staff agreement. Article 3 is the operating budget. Kelly, I think these might need to be renumbered. There's no Article 4.
I just saw that, yep.
Okay. So the next article would be for the SAU budget, which the co-op share is $997,899. The meeting, at this point, the public hearing for the SAU budget was anticipated to be last week. It was postponed due to the snow, so there was a meeting on the 29th that'll have the public hearing for the SAU budget. Then we have a placeholder for the athletic revolving fund and the expendable trust, because we're trying to open one and shift them from the expendable trust over to the revolving fund. Then we have...
Darlene, I just sent out to everyone an update on those two articles that I just got from legal, so you have that in your email.
Okay, great. Thank you, Kelly. We'll review that. Okay, moving on to the next article on the facilities trust, then the contingency fund, and then you have an article to accept the provisions. This is kind of just standing language that most districts are, I think a lot of districts have just kind of adopted it a million years ago, maybe when they, became an SAU. So this is shall the school district accept the provisions of RSA 198:20-B, providing that any school district at an annual meeting may adopt an article authorizing indefinitely until specific rescission, blah, 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 unanticipated money from state, federal government funds during the fiscal year. So that allows us to accept any grant funds, essentially, and covers us in the event things like the CARES Act or the supplemental funding continue.
Yes.
Okay.
And also allow, if there was ever a donation or something that came through, or local funding of some sort, we could accept that as well.
Okay, so does that replace the need for a public hearing or to accept the specific funds, or actually to utilize them?
I think I don't think you need a public hearing, but the school board, I believe, would probably still vote to accept the funds.
Okay. And then the next one is the special education aid. Do we still need that if we accept the other, if we implement the other one?
Right. That's a question I have into legal right now, so they haven't.
Okay, so there might be a little bit of shifting with those last two
Yeah.
articles. So that's more of like a housekeeping, those are the kind of housekeeping articles.
Yes.
Okay, does anyone have any questions about the draft warrant? Okay, seeing none. Let's see where I am on the agenda. I'm sorry, folks, I'm just flipping back and forth. I did leave out the financial update, but Kelly was kind enough to forward the current budget view, so if we could just take a couple of minutes to look at where we are with that. Kelly?
Yes, so right now we're projecting a balance returning to the taxpayers of $238,000, but I want to caution you that this is, early on, and it will also be adjusted by what we determine to be our final warrant articles that are funded by unassigned fund balance. So right now we're using what was in there last year as placeholders. We are seeing a lot of savings. We had hiring savings, and we have a lot of special ed costs that are not what we expected them to be, and that's mostly due to COVID-19. And there's a lot of, trickle-down savings as well. So when you're not spending as much on wages, you're also saving on benefits as well. So we, right now, have a healthy sum going to the taxpayers, all things considered, but that could go up.
So I'm a little.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm a little surprised by the transportation.
Right. There's a lot of families that are choosing not to utilize services. So.
Oh. Okay.
They may be homeschooling or other options that, as I understand it anyway.
Okay. So a lot of those savings are coming from the special ed, student services type of things.
Right. There are a lot of our savings that are coming from that.
Okay.
Yes. And then we've been covered as much as we are aware of for COVID-19 expenses, and this particular revenue and expense takes out all of the expense that we have received reimbursement for.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no revenue in this report and no expense, at least that's equal to what we received as revenue. And we have received a total of $319,000, well, almost $320,000 actually, in funds as reimbursement from the state. So, but those funds are only paying for expenses through December 30th. So we will be incurring other expenses that we may or may not be reimbursed for. There's no plan for that at this point.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. Sorry. Too much screen sharing. Okay. So next we have a school board update. Cindy, is there anything we haven't covered between Drew giving us that overview?
I don't really think so. I mean, both of the CBAs are still in the works. I think that.
We can't hear Cindy at all.
Okay.
Is this?
Which is Cindy's microphone on? Okay.
No, we've covered quite a bit. The only thing.
Can you hear her now?
Better.
Yeah, you have to
Okay, I'm going to relay what Cindy says.
You covered pretty much everything. The only thing that I will say is we had a lot of discussion quickly after Drew's presentation about how that possibly could be done under those time frames and how it could possibly be done on a Tuesday.
Okay, so Cindy said we had covered a lot of items that were discussed at the school board meeting, and that there was some significant discussion among the board members about how they would be able to kind of meet the timelines and be able to, that Drew laid out, and be able to vote on the Tuesday that would have been the date of the annual meeting. So those are the things that will be determined with that subsequent meeting in early January.
Yeah, there was discussion about and I think Drew was going to check to see if we can move it to a Saturday.
Yeah, and they were considering, asked Drew to see if there was a possibility to move the vote to a Saturday. Personally, after reviewing the minutes, I think a lot of the issues with the dates and the timelines are related to the CBA negotiations, and those negotiations and timeframes are set out back in the September-October timeframe. So I'm not sure how much that's my starting and speaking, not speaking for Cindy. I'm not sure how much that negotiation schedule allows for changes in dates and things like that at this time.
The biggest thing was the Saturday thing, because you're basically saying 1,000 people have to come between 5 and 7, or
right. Okay. So voting on a Saturday became a significant issue just by the sheer magnitude of people coming to do the voting during the time we would have normally held a meeting.
There's going to be volunteers out there in the dark collecting.
Right, collecting, and it would be dark, and people would be, outside in the dark collecting ballots and things like that. I don't know, we obviously wouldn't be closing school. I just, yeah. So a lot of issues to be resolved and discussed. So.
Or we could just have our regular meeting.
Or we could just have a regular meeting. Yeah. Yes, we could. Have the restrictions, I'm not sure who I'm asking, have the restrictions been lifted for the number of people you could have socially distanced, like in like the gym and the auditorium?
I think as long as they're socially distanced. I don't know for sure.
Yeah, okay, I don't know what large group means anymore.
Yeah. Socially distanced, and that's more than 200 or 300.
Yep. Yeah. Okay, so lots of things to decide. Were there any decisions? I think the prior meeting addressed the program of studies and things like that.
And in the minutes, Mr. Barnes submitted, they had a group, a committee, and they met, and they put the recommendations, and we accepted the recommendations.
Okay, so the group that was working on the program of studies accepted the recommendations of the school board and implemented them into the program of studies. So did that mean that I think the shift in the science requirements was a significant concern to the school board at the prior meeting?
They're at 3 credits.
So
they may look into course changes next year.
Okay, but so students would still need 3 science credits, 3 years of science, and they'll look at evaluating course content and things like that.
And the only financial thing is they're going to see if the budget will support the half PE teacher.
An additional half PE teacher.
Yeah. So if the budget supports it, we'll.
Okay, so the only financial impact was. So this was something else in the program of studies. They would need an additional half PE teacher. So
we had it. We just didn't fill. I mean, we couldn't fill it last year.
Oh, so it's still in there, and okay, and they'll still look to fill it in the upcoming year. Okay.
I would be curious. Just I don't know if anybody has an idea what people think is a reasonable increase for the teachers in the contract. I mean, I would be curious to know CPI, like what is everybody thinking? Because we keep getting told, what we have to be careful of the percentage, but obviously we've got to give them something.
So Cindy's question is looking for feedback on what we would think reasonable percentages would be in the teachers' contracts. So I'll open that up. We did provide some information about total cost of contract.
Well, now that you have what you have. Now you know where we are with the percentage.
Right.
As far as the increase for operating. I'm just curious because, you know, we're gonna get there, and I would love to have feedback and know what people are thinking, instead of just the 3 people that are negotiating.
Right, so Cindy's asking if we have any feedback we would like to provide on the cost, on the percentages or increases for staff.
I will offer, in my long history of looking at contract increases, that I continually see 1%, 1%, 1%. So that's, I think it should be not greater than approximately that increase.
So you're suggesting then like as an increase to the table itself?
No, 1% of the, I'm talking about the warrant articles. I have no idea what the percent should be. I'm not offering advice on that. I'm saying that time and time again, the increase in the teacher's contract is approximately 1% of our, on our warrant article. That's
Okay.
what I'm saying.
Of the 1 million.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, that helps. I mean, I'm just curious.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else?
Can you hear me?
Yes, Raul, go ahead.
So in my company, at the end of the year, nominal good increase this year was 3%. So if you were a good performer, average good performer, you got about a 3% salary increase. Just as a data point.
Okay, what I could send out to people is the current step table that we have for the current year, and that would show you what so we would, I have a step table, and then a version of this table that calculates the increase as you move one step. So I just don't recall off the top of my head where those increases are. I would hazard a guess is to say that as you move up the step table, the increase as you would move step to step decreases. So the people who see the highest increases are people that are on the newer and on the lower end of the step table, as opposed to those that are at the higher end. And we do not have an off step. Right, so you have to do something with the top step. So we have a significant level of the staff, probably at this point greater than 50%, that sits on that top step. And so a lot of times what the collective bargaining agreement has to do is look at the step table if they're going to make an adjustment, or if they're going to make an adjustment just to the top step. So if the average increase across the step table is, and I have no idea if this is true, I'm just putting a number out there, if it's, I don't know, 3.5 or 4%. That is not what the people on that final step with the greatest longevity in the district would see. They would effectively see a 0% increase unless the school board negotiates a specific increase for that step or for the table in total. So if they recommend a 1% increase in the table, then that means people on the top step would get a 1% increase, and everybody else would get 1% on top of what the prior increase would have been. But I can get all of that information to you just based on what our current step table looks like.
I'm just
Yeah, the other aspect of that though too is the benefits compensation, because I'd say it is even like a 1% increase in raises. If the benefits go up significantly, that's huge.
Yes.
And then additionally, what we've been talking about with all this extra increase in NHRS, that I hope that's being considered as part of these negotiations, because that should be considered a benefit because of all that extra money we're contributing to the retirement system.
Yeah, and one of the things I think we've talked about and shared with the school board members who are negotiating is that what we haven't seen since we shifted the dollar caps to percentages, we haven't seen a commensurate reduction in the percentages that the district covers over the last, well, since that happened. So that was probably 5 to 7 years ago. And yes, Matt, to your point, the costs go up significantly, and the district still covers a significant, but a significant portion of that cost. And we never really have addressed bringing those percentages down. And I'm not sure if we even said when we gave the recommendations to the school board, if we said, maybe a 1-year contract just gets us through COVID a little bit, and then you consider something different as you move forward. So right now, we're just using standard language in the draft article that shows like 3-year contracts, but I'm not sure if that's the best option at this point, given our current circumstances. So.
Okay, that helps. I mean,
I would say that the contract needs to be looked at in totality of cost, including the NHRS and the whole package, and add that to the 2.5% increase we've got. I think you got to look at the totality. If the totality is a 4.5% increase in a budget in a 1% environment, an inflationary environment, I don't know that that's sustainable. So I think it's got to be looked at in the totality of what is sustainable.
And that's true, and that's one of the things, even when we were looking at the CPI number or multiplier to use in the budget, we did end up with a 0% multiplier. So because CPI was lower and inflation was low, we weren't looking for increases that were in that 3% range, whether we were just looking at salaries, and certainly, we didn't really address it within the totality as you just articulated, Lauren and Matt as well. So.
I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, I'm trying to get my full screen back. Let's see if I can. Where's my whole screen? Stopping that. Oh, there we are. Okay. Let's see, school announcements. We're on track for pending input on date changes and how the meeting is going to proceed. We're on track for our next meeting to be 1/28. Thursday, the 28th is the fourth Thursday in the new year. And at that point, we would be looking for to understand the CBA agreement, and depending on public hearing dates and things like that, might be able to flush out a draft version of a public hearing presentation that would be available. So at this point, I'll ask if there are any other items that anyone wants to talk about. I'll ask Dave, our process observer, how we did. Need to yeah, there we go.
Yeah, I just unmuted you.
Yeah.
I can't see what the time is, but I'm sure we're doing great.
8:05.
Perfect. Right on time.
So at this point, I will wish everyone Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and Happy New Year. As always, if you have any questions or anything you'd like addressed, please send me an email, and I'll get any of your requests over to Kelly ASAP. And with that, at 8:05 p.m., I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
From Brian, seconded by Cindy. Roll call. All those in favor of the motion to adjourn: Matt.
Aye.
Dave.
Yes. Hi.
Lauren.
Aye.
Tom.
Yes,
You're
hi.
muted, but it looked like you said aye.
He said he wants to extend it another hour.
Thank you for the Zoom meeting.
Absolutely. Happy you could all be flexible, and I can tell you're all enjoying being wherever it is you're all located. Brian,
Yes.
yes. Raul, yes. Cindy, yes. And Darlene, yes. So again, a unanimous vote, 800. Thank you very much.
Thank you.